All right, and without further ado, our presenter today is Cathy Cave. She doesn't really need any introductions, but I'll do one anyway. You can remember Cathy from the CARES Connect that you attended in 2023. Cathy Cave has more than 30 years' experience as an administrator, facilitator, and consultant with a vast array of specialties, including cultural inclusion, equity, anti racism work, and trauma informed services and supports. She is one of New York State's early trauma champions, and since 2012, Cathy has worked as a senior training consultant with the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. She uses her perspectives as a survivor, a family member, a community member, and administrator to facilitate organizational change to improve service quality at local, state, and national levels. We thank you so much for being here with us, Cathy, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ask each of you to go ahead and put in the chat what's right with you today. That is not something that has been traditionally a part of my beginnings of to a day or to a conversation, but something that I learned from this group, and I love when y'all do it, and I love hearing about it. So please go ahead and put in the chat what's right with you today. Love it. So many good things, so many good things. And thank you for sharing.
A lot of good stuff.
Uh-huh. Wow. Like such a good way to begin. I'm a sunny optimist by nature, but I woke up a little rough today and it's already better. So I'm going with that. Um, Again, as Haley was saying, our conversation today is really about what's come up for you all in terms of successes and challenges as you're trying to embrace trauma-informed approaches and incorporate that into your peer support work. So that said, I have a couple of things I'd like to do to get us started today. And then I welcome you to, talk about the challenges or to name a success, something that made a difference. So as you all are continuing, to put in the chat what's right with you today, you are welcome to, continue to do that. If you haven't quite finished, that's fine. And I'm going to screen share because there is a place I also like to add to beginnings. So let's just bear with me here while I figure out how to do that. Love it when something works the way it's supposed to. It's always so good. All right. I wanted to bring us to a conversation about mind body practice and actually begin by um, opening up the opportunity. If someone has any practices that you have regularly incorporated into your work, things that you have shared with people you're supporting, I want us to take a moment and acknowledge that. But before we do, I actually want to share a practice this morning. So again, as I shared, a little bit of a rough start to my day and that it's already getting better. And I may have shared this card deck. If you remember from training, I have lots of cards and I love to share them. This one is called Mindfulness Self-Care Cards. And I realized I had given away so many that I didn't have one to share last week. So I ordered a new package. And so this morning, when I picked a card, this was my message. So I like to shuffle them up and close my eyes and just pick one. And often that is exactly the message I'm needing to hear. So I wanted to share that because that was my experience today. This card reads, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. and that's unknown, and I think it's also something that I've heard a lot. And then on the other side of the card, there's a practice. So I'm going to ask everybody to join me with this practice. And you are welcome to keep your eyes open or closed, whatever feels better for you. Just go ahead and sit in your chair and put your back against the back of your seat. Like, notice it. Notice where you connect. I have a pillow behind me, and I'm noticing how the pillow actually fits right in the small of my back. And I can feel the lotion I put on my hands. I can smell the lotion I put on my hands. I can feel my elbows on the arms of my chair. So just notice, do a top to bottom inventory, and just notice where your body is touching something else. If your skin is meeting your clothing, where is that happening? And I will read to you this. So deep breath in and let it out. Just breathe normally and comfortably for you. And then the action on the other side of this card says, place both feet on the ground or on the floor. Notice where your feet touch the floor or the inside of your sock or the inside of your shoe, depending on what's on your feet today. Take a deep breath in and let it out as comfortably as you can. And as you place both feet on the ground, take long and deep breaths whenever you need to keep you grounded and to help you stay present. So just practice that. Feet on the floor, breathing in and out, and feeling present. Thanks so much for that. I'm going to open it up and ask folks to either request to be unmuted or to put in the chat, what's a practice that you do that supports your mind, your body, your spirit to stay present? And you can raise your hand if you'd like to say it out loud, or just put a note in the chat. Either way is fine.
Brittany says meditation.
Nice.
Ursula, I pray and read.
Wonderful.
Loretta, meditation, working out, weight training, volunteering.
Love that.
Amber, mindful walk without my phone while eating an orange.
Yay! Getting a few of the senses in at once. That's fun.
Alexis, deep breathing. Wendell, deep breathing and getting rest.
Love that. Love that.
Sandra, move my body and say with energy to manifest my goals.
Love it.
Blaine, readings, yoga. Jen, check-ins with self throughout the day. Ben, I like walking my dog. Deb, praying. Michael Gaines, reading, meditating, and sleeping. All at the same time. That's pretty impressive. Andrew, affirmations. Deborah, mindfulness, 5 sense exercise. Claudette, every day I practice mindfulness, and it has allowed me to be calmer and opened my whole mind, body, and soul with such a connection that I am clearer than ever, clearer and never overreact, and I love myself more. Michael Murray, listen to instrumental soft music. Taz, read just for the day and pray.
Yep. Thanks so much, everyone. And again, I don't remember we talked about it's not so much just that we do these things. It's important to know why we need to do these things. So it's being in tune enough with your own mind, your own body, your own spirit, so that we don't put our stuff on other people who are already vulnerable. It's
Kathy, I've got one more if you want me to read it.
yes, please.
This is actually Greg. Greg says, lately I've been getting into music from the 80s.
All
I
right.
refused to listen to it in the 80s. Last week, Prince. This week, David Bowie.
So fun. And thank you for reading that last one. It's like one of the things to always keep in mind is like, what are we open to? You know, some of us will struggle. So I personally struggle with meditation. It's really hard for me to meditate. But if I pick a card and just focus on what's that message, then I can do that. And that lets me be in that space. So different things work for different people at different times. Something that you've been doing may all of a sudden not be helpful to you. And that's common. So the point would be just to really be open to what are the things that we do that keep us from being the clinic on fire going over the falls, right? And how is it that we can do that scan in the morning or do that scan before a conversation and just think about for a moment, how am I doing right now? Because whatever we're carrying into our conversations with others does not stay hidden, right? We live our lives out loud. We share these huge pieces of ourselves in purpose of the work. So there's a little bit of extra moral imperative to show up in a good way and to be honest about however we're showing up, because mutuality is a thing. So we can actually say, you know what, not my best day today, but I'm going to set that aside right now and be here with you. And if we need to walk and talk, sit and talk, not talk, but be together, whatever that means in that moment for the person we're supporting, we show up as the best we can. And it's that honesty and authenticity about what's the best we can. The other practice that I wanted us to revisit is this question. Before we get started, is there anything that we need to do to support you to feel more safe or more comfortable? So that very concrete idea, very specific idea, bringing that directly to the conversations we have. Otherwise, we're just showing up and assuming, I'm good, you're good, let's go. And that might not be true. So to press pause, to recognize that trauma happens and that trauma has real impacts. Is there anything that we need to do before we get started to support you to feel more safe and more comfortable? And you're offering that other person that choice. So before we go further, I'm asking each and every one of you, is there anything that we need to do before we move forward to help you feel more safe or more comfortable? And if you want to unmute and share that, or raise your hand and share that, or put it in the chat, any of those ways is fine.
Andrew Hill says to everyone, is there anything you want me to do? Is there anything you want me to know that could help me support you?
I love that. Love that reframing. Love that openness. And again, leaving the choice with all of us. Anything coming up for anybody? Any needs around communication or just anything that's coming to mind to support your safety and your comfort. All right. So then I would also say, please ask for what you need if something comes up. Okay. Thanks, everyone. All right. So again, this time and space is for you. What are the things that it would be helpful for us to talk about today so that you feel like this time is well spent? So we're here together. We're here till 12 o'clock. I know the CEUs are important. So other than CEUs, what brings you here to this conversation today? What would help you feel that your time is well spent?
Claudette says, just the fact that this was asked and meaningful. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Brittany, I really enjoyed the last training.
Thank you.
Loretta, an opportunity to be with my recovery tribe.
Love it.
Jamie, here because the last training was so helpful.
Thank you. I see a couple of folks have hands up. Reggie or Haley, can you help me with responding to those folks?
Yep. Brittany, you can go ahead.
I just really learned a lot in the last training. Specifically asking peers if it's okay to meet in my office or would they like to go outside or if there's a place in the center, and that has made a difference. And also, I have fidgets in my office and coloring pages, which I learned about myself. It's easier for me to focus and pay attention during a training. When I'm coloring, I'm actually printing my coloring pages now so that I can focus better. So I just learned a lot, and I utilized some of those skills today. And so just kind of like having a refresher and maybe potentially, hopefully learning a little bit more.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. It's wonderful.
Andrew?
So what I was wondering is, okay, first, so the connect that we did, I was able to learn a whole lot, something about the layout and the way things were explained. I was able to pick up on a lot of it. And what has happened since then is I have become aware of situations where, people coming off of substances encounter things like multiple diagnoses, and the symptoms of those diagnoses can overlap. Like, for instance, PTSD and ADHD. And trying to provide services for people, is there things that we can look out for that might help us differentiate or provide better care for people, really not knowing, them not knowing, and me not knowing, really what all is going on.
I love that. Thank you so much. And we can definitely spend some time there today.
And Jen, you have your hand up. I'm sorry, Andrew, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Jen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hey, thank you. One of the things that I'm really wanting to learn more about and beginning to learn more about is just co-regulation. What can I do to support myself and be more fully present with my peers? And as someone who lives with anxiety, trauma in my past, I can get dysregulated pretty easily. So what do we need to do to show up as calmly and with curiosity, with presence, so that I'm of best support, and of course, so that I do not do any harm to my peers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cathy, you got a couple of things in the chat.
Sure.
So Deb Esposito says, love Cathy Cave trainings.
Thank you.
Ursula says, I know this will help me with life challenges and I can show up better for my peers. tasks. I work with people who depend on me to learn all I can about trauma and help them overcome some of their own. And Faye, just the fact that trauma is now something that is recognized and how to handle that has been important. I find myself understanding trauma responses in myself and others. Wendell provided an opportunity to explore the possibility of how to help others with connection and understanding, and Andrew tips on being more aware of transference.
Thank you so much. So for the person who asked about transference, I'm going to actually invite you to share a little bit about what you mean by that. You're welcome to unmute and just share a little bit more, please.
Hey, so really just more about whenever I talk with people, being more aware of whenever they say something that sounds similar to something that I've experienced, and then that stuff comes up in me, like my stuff comes up in me. Like as hard as I work and as aware as I try to be, things still come up. Like stuff still happens. Life is still my life. It still is what it is, and just being more mindful of not falling into that trap, like not starting to project like what I think or how I feel my responses into what I'm, because they're a different person. Whatever they've experienced is their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to help them, with their experience and not put my stuff on them. I've just caught myself, that has happened a couple times where I had to step away and just be like, hey, I need to go away and let me get somebody else to sit and talk with you to keep from doing that. Like, by the time I noticed, it was too late. It had gone too far and I needed to step away, and I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So I think that's a good place for us to start since it's fresh and we're right here. One of the things I would offer is that in peer support, we have worked really hard to step away from clinical language. And that's why I was asking, can you share a little bit more about what you mean? So the terms around transference and countertransference are really common clinical terms. And in peer support, really trying to hold on to what's the language of human experience. Like this happens because we're human, we are deeply empathetic, we are in these very intimate and personal conversations with folks. And because we're human and we care, it can get in us, under us, around us, and we can end up in kinds of conversations that we don't intend. So first of all, good on you for recognizing, oh, wait a minute, especially when there's something familiar about a person or their experience, the things that they're sharing. It is very easy for that to become part of our own stories. And so to be able to, one, notice when it's happening, and to think about ways to step away when you notice. And so the other part of this is that you have someone who has shared deeply with you. So to leave the conversation and get somebody else, or to even to stay in the conversation for the moment, but then to give that person to someone else, feels like a rejection that many of us have experienced. So I'm always a little cautious. I'm always a lot cautious. I'm maybe just perfectly honest about when we get to a place where we're feeling, oh, wait a minute, this is touching my heart in a way I don't intend. and I need to step away. I would say to try to offer a small break when you notice. Excuse me. What do I mean by that? Small break. I mean, you know what? I am going to just get a drink of water or go get a box of tissues or just step out for a minute. I will be right back. But I always try to give a reason. And then I'm honest and I live that reason. So if I say I'm going to step out and go grab some tissues, I realize we don't have any, I'm coming back with tissues. If I say I'm going to step out and get a drink of water, I'm coming back with a drink of water. As a matter of fact, if it's in person, I would offer that to the other person. So if you do that piece in the beginning around anything that we need to do before we get started to support feeling more safe, more comfortable, what you're doing is just you're building on that idea that we are in this relationship, you and I, by choice. So whether it's a support group or a one-to-one conversation, whether it's in person or it's virtual, be honest. If you notice that something is coming up for you, say, you know what, I know what's my own body. I know my own thoughts. I know about me. So I'm going to be prepared before I meet with someone. Like, what's my stuff? And I'm still learning about my stuff. That's okay. That's okay. I can be honest about that. But you can actually talk about what trauma does. So there's not this top-down role of, oh, I'm in this more clinical position and I have to be caretaking of this other person. Peer support, we are in this together. So I try to be real open about, listen, sometimes when I have conversations with people, I get teary because I know that about me. I cry at sad commercials. So if I'm in peer support, I'm going to say to somebody, if I tear up, it's not you. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just, I have a lot of empathy and I'm going to hold it in my heart. And sometimes it comes out in tears. I'm just going to name that. So then when you can be that forthcoming, that open, that honest, there's not much we have to hide when we're in conversations. Sometimes people will actually say, as a person in long-term recovery, one of the things I have struggled with is this. I'm working on that. So if it comes out in this way, again, I'll try to take care of it. I'm not trying to get you to take care of it, but I just want you to notice if it happens. The best skill we have is that we have a whole life of experience that we can draw from to name what's happening in the present. So to get real comfortable around, yeah, sometimes I show up a little messy and I am so sorry. If I'm sorry. If it's sometimes my stuff comes out this way, I'm just sharing it because I want you to know. None of us is perfect. Or we are all perfect just as we are, depending on how you view that, right? So if you're talking with someone and you notice that, your fists are clenching, your stomach hurts, you're getting a headache, you get sweaty, your breathing is changing, it's good to say, you know what, I just noticed that this is happening for me, and I'm going to just take a minute and calm myself. So what helps when I do that is taking some deep breaths. What helps when I do that is this grounding exercise. What you are modeling in real time is self-regulation. Co-regulation is when you're doing that with another person. So what co-regulation can look like is that you're actually naming out loud the things you do that keep you grounded, calm, connected to yourself. And so what we're offering to folks who are visibly seeing us struggle, because the other thing about survivors is we have a finely tuned radar for someone either not showing up in a genuine way or for people struggling and not naming the struggle. It's like, why is that a secret? If you're telling me it's okay, why is it a secret? So I would much rather say to somebody, you know, how my own trauma comes up is that I get distracted. So if I look out the window, or if I'm looking in a different direction, um, if you notice, you can let me know. You can call me out on that. But I will also work really hard to stay grounded. These are the things I do that help me stay grounded. All of that is stuff that we can do out loud with another person so that they know we're working on our stuff in the same way we're encouraging them to work on theirs. Now, obviously, if you're, involved with someone in a conversation and you find yourself really disconnected where you are no longer present for that person, then a good thing to say is, you know what, I just realized I'm really struggling today. I'm going to take a minute. Do you mind waiting for me? If the person says, I don't want to wait, then be real about what you need to do. I need to reschedule. Can we meet later? Can I get a cup of coffee? Whatever that is. But you also have a responsibility to make sure you follow up. So we're not just exiting from people's lives. What we're saying is many of us trauma survivors. Sometimes when somebody's experience, or for me, it wouldn't even be what they're saying. It could be what somebody smells like. I have been in conversations where somebody will have a perfume on or a cologne that smells like a strong men's aftershave. And that's distracting for me. And so I'm going to be really honest right up front and say, you know what? I just realized I'm sensitive to smells. That may be something I've talked about with folks a lot already. If they know me, if you know me, you know that about me. Right. So if it's new, I'm going to say, I'm just going to need a minute. I want to go put some lotion on my hands so that it helps me focus. These are not things that around self-regulation and co-regulation. These are not things that stay in your head. These are things we do and share with others as part of being trauma informed in our peer support. Somebody might say, I don't like the color of this room. And you say, okay, let's go find another place. Let's figure out another place or another way we can do that. Is there anything in here that would help you focus? Like, these are things we do out loud. Very often in peer support, what we find ourselves doing is just talking. And when we're just talking, we're missing opportunities to be in real relationship. Because relationship involves our body language. It involves what you notice. It involves what the environment has in it. So you all have talked about fidget toys. You talked about coloring pages. You can work with another person to co-create the space you're in. So what do I mean by that? I asked someone, what is it that we can do to support safety and comfort? And they say, you know what? I just need something to keep my hands busy. Make sure you have something to keep your hands busy for them to use. And you can also say, well, I found that when I knit, so do you mind if I knit while we talk? We don't only have to just talk.
Kathy, I believe Sarah has her hand raised.
No, please go ahead, Sarah.
So I'm gonna get out of my comfort zone. Yeah, so just a real quick request, I guess, it would be if we like limit the amount of things going into the chat, because every time somebody puts something in, I keep getting notifications and it's extremely distracting. So I was just gonna throw that out there.
Thanks, Sarah. So, first of all, thank you for asking for what you need. And what your request leads me to think about then is that folks would, in order to keep the interaction that we're having, do more hand raising, do more what? What would be helpful? And that's for the group. So how can we make space for the request and keep our interaction going for today? Anybody have ideas about that?
Amber, go ahead.
What if, because sometimes I'll have a thought and I'll put it in the chat, right, as I'm having it. And my brain is a busy, 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 busy place. But I could put it in the chat and wait until like the end of a portion of presenting by Cathy. And then I can hit enter, like when, like there's a pause, like, or every like half hour or whatever that looks like. I can put my thought there, but I don't have to hit send until, and if it's really urgent or I feel like I need to talk about, of course I raise my hand. But otherwise I can save my chat for maybe something like that.
Okay,
I think that's perfect.
cool. Any other thoughts, anybody? Great. Sarah, thanks for the request, and thanks you all who have ideas about how we can help navigate that. And I also appreciated Sarah saying, we're not asking for no chat. It's how can we like limit it some? So I think these are like good solutions. Cool. Something that I'm going to share with you all and then give you some time in a breakout room. So Haley, we're going to do breakout rooms in a few minutes, but I want to screen share something first. Let's see, stop sharing that. And can everybody see the self-directed emotional support plan on the screen? Yay, love it when technology actually works in my favor. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of self-regulation and co-regulation. And it really is a continuation of the conversation we were having. And we used this when we were together. And so what are we doing? What we are doing is that each person has an opportunity to say, these are the tools and resources that I have, the things I do that help me feel good, calm, relaxed, focused, grounded, clear-headed, and safe. And the reason that all those different words are there is because people have their own definitions of safety. And none of us can determine for another person what safety feels like. So we have to add these conversations to our work. So when you and I first meet, or let's say I just discovered this thing together today and we've been working together for months and months, but I'll say, I have a new tool and I want us to try using it. You actually have conversations with the person you're supporting about what helps them feel good, calm, relaxed, focused, grounded, clear-headed, or safe, or whatever language they would like to use. But here's the other piece of this. I would encourage each and every person to also do this for yourself, to list out your tools. There's something about naming, when I feel a certain kind of way, these are the things that help me feel better, help me stay calm, connected, grounded, connected to myself. Because being connected to myself helps me better connect with others. So sometimes folks would like some help with managing, or when they feel exhausted or worried or feel they have a headache or they have a stomach ache or overwhelm or feel unsafe. And so when you're having these kinds of conversations, and again, you could have this with every single person you're in contact with, it's truly what helps me get myself together when I'm feeling not together. And is there stuff that helps? When somebody says to me, when I am overwhelmed, I get a headache, or my shoulders are hunched up around my ears, or that I stop being clear in how I communicate, or that it sounds like I'm angry and I'm not, that I just want to sleep because I'm so exhausted. What you're doing is putting on the table, these are ways that human beings respond to distress. When we are having a trauma response, all of these things can be in place. Or somebody might say to you, I don't really get exhausted or a headache or a stomach ache, but I get really anxious. Then you use the language the person gives you. So much of the time, especially for any of us who have been involved in clinical treatment, we will start to use language that's more clinical language rather than talking about when you're upset, what does your body do? When you are sad, what is your body doing? We can have real conversation about mind, body, and spirit in the ways that people talk with each other. And again, not that clinical language is a bad thing, it's just peer support isn't the place for it. It's not that having a diagnosis isn't helpful. Some people will feel it's incredibly helpful and can say, well, my depression shows up like this. So for me, as an example, I've dealt with depression my entire adult life. And I'm happy to talk about it. And I'm happy to name it. Because the more I name it, the more I talk about it, the more resources I gather for myself. So the sharing makes me stronger and more clear. And maybe in that sharing, I'm helping somebody else who actually is experiencing depression, and that's what they name it. But let's say somebody says, yeah, I'm just kind of down all the time, and I'm not really sure what would be helpful. Then I can have a conversation about mind body practices that help me. So talking, sure, helps me. Going to therapy, sure, sometimes that's really helpful. Knowing that, wait a minute, oh, this isn't me, I'm not bad or broken, but that I have something that I'm struggling with, that my body is not well, and I'm struggling with that. So let's talk about that. So what I'm saying here is that having this activity that you do for yourself, but also have it in conversation where you're asking someone else, can be really powerful. So the rest of this worksheet, and this is something that you all did get as part of the handouts, but if you did not, we can send it out after today for sure, so you can easily access it. But then the next part of this is really important. So first it's naming what's coming up. What are the tools and resources I have? What would I like some support around or help with? And you can change the language. This is not like a rocket science-y kind of thing. You can use the language that works for you. And then strategies for feeling better. So if, for example, you and I were having this conversation and I'm talking about me, when I'm feeling really sad or really scared, it might look like anger to other people, and I don't even notice it unless somebody gives me that feedback or asks, why am I so angry? So there's this conversation in this guide. It's a one-page thing. What are ways that I could let somebody know rather than blowing up or saying the wrong thing or treating somebody who's asking about me because they care and my response sounds angry? How can I just say I'm having a hard time? So these are conversations to have for you to get comfortable with, but also to be able to share this kind of conversation. I might it was actually the example from earlier, when someone said, you know, what do you want me to know? What would be helpful for me to know about how you are, how you're doing? So things I could do in the moment that might be helpful. Some physical or emotional signs that I might be getting worse. Things others can do to help in the moment, and things I don't want anybody to do. So when I am feeling really on edge or distressed, or I'm sad, or I'm scared, for somebody to tell me to calm down is like lighting a match. So let's not do that. And if I tell you that, then you're going to remember because I told you, because we talked about it. I will also tell you things that do help in the moment, offering me a drink, asking if I need a break. So what I want you all to do in your breakout sessions, and we're going to do groups of 5 so that you all can talk about this. What helps you be able to use this tool as a resource? So what would it take for you to bring this conversation into your peer support work and really talk with each other about how people are feeling, what's coming up? So sometimes people will say, just as another example, I don't want to talk about my feelings. That's okay. What do you think? When you're noticing what's happening in your body or what's happening, you know, in your head, what's a good way to let somebody know what you're going through? So it's using these questions as a guide, but also recognizing that you all are really good at peer support relationships. You're good at it. So what would it take for you to actually bring this conversation into your work? So what we're going to do is we're going to breakout groups. You have 15 minutes in your groups. You're going to have groups of around 5 each. And talk with each other about using this kind of resource. What would it take? I will be out here if you have questions. You're welcome to come out and ask it. But really talk with each other in an honest way about using this resource for yourself, using it with others. What comes up for you? Any questions before we go into breakout groups? If you're in a group, please have your camera on while you're in groups. And when we come out of group, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll talk about this. So you have 15 minutes in your group. We're going to come out, take a break, and then we'll come back for a big conversation. Everybody good with the plan? All right. If not, please let me know.
All right, y'all. Some of you will have 5 and some of you will have 4 people in there. And so I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms. We'll see y'all back here in 15 minutes.
Thanks, Haley.
Michael and Ursula. Oh, there they went. Okay. And I believe Wendell had let me know that he was he was having some work done in his apartment, so he might have had to step away just now.
Okay.
He did let me know beforehand though. Oh, there he went. He joined. All right, everybody's in their rooms.
Great.
And Kathy, just for my documentation purposes, when they're in the breakout room, you wanted them to be talking about, and I may have messed this up when I was typing it, but just to talk about what it would take for them to use this emotional support plan when working with peers. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
For themselves and when in their work. Yep.
Mhm.
Anything that either of you needs or any feedback or thoughts about the conversation so far?
Yeah, no, Sarah had direct messaged me asking me the question about the chat, and I requested that she raise her hand. Because I
Great.
felt like it was a good point for her to be able to say what she needed to feel better and to feel safe and comfortable. And so,
Yep.
yeah. So I thought, and then when she was like, I suppose I don't want to, but I suppose, and I was like, well, and it went after she did it, I was like, that's why I wanted you to do it, because it kind of
Mhm.
fell into that question. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
That was exactly right.
Haley, can you hear me?
Welcome back, y'all.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hello.
So as promised, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about your small group conversation and we'll share that out. Okay? Have a good break,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to take advantage of this break.
Me too. Hi, welcome back. We'll get started in just another minute or two.
Hey, are folks going on Friday to the Cares Connect? Anybody going for, yay? I see you, Greg. Who else am I gonna see? Okay, Michelle, I'll see you
Nice. What's your Cares to Connect topic this time?
Peer supervision.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
there. Yeah, I'm going to the first one instead of the last one this year. Whew.
Cutting it close. This isn't for you, Amber.
Told y'all I'm rigid and stressed.
So fun.
Ursula said she's going to be attending as well. And of
Nice.
course, the CARES team will be there.
All good things. All good things. All right. So I'd like to hear about, what are the kinds of things you all talked about in your groups? And we have plenty of time to hear from each group. So if there's somebody who would like to start us off with, what helps? Like what makes it possible to be this kind of open, to use this kind of a resource or a tool, or even just to incorporate the philosophy into your peer support work? What'd y'all talk about? Go ahead, Sam.
Good. I hate silence, so I'm gonna um
Thank you.
so one of the things that primarily what we talked about was just like self-care, and being able to monitor like where we're at and doing the things on, our time off if we need to go to the salon or whatever that looks like. And really the only real thing that I shared, I didn't have a whole lot to share, but one of the things I do that my acupuncturist taught me was saying, speak, I'm listening. And I do that before each call because it takes me out of like my innerness, if you will. And kind of puts me in an outside perspective because I am an empath. And so I literally feel what they're feeling, which is pretty exhausting sometimes. And just having grown up with a mentality of it doesn't matter how you're feeling, you're working. So I wasn't the healthiest thing to grow up with, but I use that as an asset and just learning to use the trauma that I've experienced as an asset to help people instead of viewing it as a hindrance.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. And the idea of using our lived experience as an asset is what keeps me going. Love that. Wendell, go ahead.
Well, in our group, because they were shy in my group. They were feeling a little bit intimidated with giving out what we talked about. So the brother man is going to try to summarize what all of us were saying. We were saying that it's different strokes for different folks, and how that the trauma of one is different from the trauma of others, and how that we have to take in consideration that we're different, one, but two, with the exploration of the tools that they have to see what they have done, so we don't be repeating things, but yet helping to facilitate an openness to other things that can assist and aid them in their journey with being who they are or solidifying who they are. And we talked about it's a great tool. I think we talked about TAP, trauma, trauma something.
Action plan.
Okay. See, everybody want to come in. Come on in. Come on in. Help the brother man out. Help the brother man out. But what did you want to say with the TAP? Can someone help me out with the TAP?
Yes, the TAP was the trauma action plan for after the process of processing everything together, then give that to them as a plan of action to set up for themselves. So this way we can retable that and come back to what were some of the things, the tools that and resources that they had for themselves and build from there.
All right, that's all I got. That's all she got, and I'm finna cut it off right now.
Beautiful. Thank you. Amber, go ahead.
We and please jump in, y'all, from our Rockstar group. But I will start by just saying that we talked a lot about one of the themes was, what are we bringing into the session with us? And so like one peer was sharing about how he noticed some conflict in his own schedule that was giving him stress and how he had to address that. And then I was kind of also sort of sharing about how if I'm having a difficult time, even if I don't bring that specifically in, and like I don't pop off necessarily, of course, to my peer, I can actually share with my peer that I'm having a hard day. And here are some of the things I'm doing to help me. And we had a peer talked about using their network and their sponsor, and another peer talked about using their higher power. And it just like so I can share honestly about my own challenge while I also share what I'm doing to support myself as a way of kind of modeling both.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks so much.
I see Melissa's hand up.
Hey, we talked a little bit, Cathy, you said something today that blew my mind that you probably said in the last training and I just didn't hear it. But today I heard it when you said that everyone has their own definition of what safety feels like for them. And I needed to hear that so much. My husband and I talk about this a lot. Safety is a word, trauma is a trigger word for some people. Like they feel a certain way when they hear people use the word trauma, and safety is like that for me. My husband sees things as safe and unsafe, and that word just doesn't resonate with me. So I love the idea of discussing, what that might feel like for someone without having to necessarily identify it as safety. It might just be calm or quiet or okay. And we kind of talked about maybe using this form with new peers, to sort of get to know someone and what the language is that they kind of prefer around these things. Some people like a more clinical language, or the more I don't know, like open to different types of strategies, right? Some people like the word coping strategies, and some people just want to talk about it in a different way. And when you kind of use these plain language questions, you can maybe get to know someone a little better as you're getting to know them, and maybe develop some of the new strategies over time. So That was kind of what we talked about, but I just wanted to say thank you for that today because I heard it and it was very helpful to me.
Thank you for sharing. And you're very welcome. Let's see. Did we hear from Jen yet? We did not. Jen, what do you want to share today?
Thanks, Kathy, and thank you for being with us this morning. This is a wonderful follow-up to the training that you conducted last year. One of the themes that came up as we were discussing in our group is the theme of awareness and awareness of our vulnerability, and looking at vulnerability as a strength-based way of being in relationship with another. Of course, we need to be responsible for our vulnerability. We need to be able to take care of ourselves when we're feeling vulnerable. But what I've observed and what I continue to notice when I'm in settings is that if I'm allowing myself to be more vulnerable, to be more open, authentic, true to what is going on with me in the moment, then that lends to a much stronger connection, which is kind of funny. And I'm laughing because for most of my life, I've been in, protect and defend mode where I've armored myself and I've been very afraid to be vulnerable. It's not safe to be vulnerable. Come to find out, there actually is safety and vulnerability, and just showing up however I show up in the moment. Again, keeping in mind that I'm responsible for my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can't allow my stuff to impact others in a negative way. So that's been a really powerful realization for me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that is amazing. And honestly, a drop the mic moment, because that's the key, right? That is the key. We do not have to continue in ways that we've had to survive. So if we've had to survive by controlling everything, showing no feelings, not asking for help, not admitting you need help, if that's how we got through life, it is the most necessary thing to figure out new ways to cope and new ways to consider how we walk in the world. But also that control, defend doesn't work in peer support. It's the polar opposite of everything we need to do and need to be and how we need to show up. So I love everything you shared. So thank you for that. About others, anything else that came up either for you or for your group, anything that wasn't mentioned yet?
Well, we also talked about we need to be respectful that traumas are different for people, and never to be judgmental. In fact, in the organization, when we were doing trauma-informed care training, we did it with every possible person and the environment as options of what goes on, so that somebody may have a very large feeling, reaction internally, whatever you want to call it, from what maybe you see as well, that's a small trauma. They differ for people, and we need to be respectful. And the other thing that I added in was some things, and this is again our resources, where I've used hope, and how I had to work that in order to get past traumas, as well as good old gratitude. What does that do? So just sharing, as some people have said, some other things and some basic concepts. So it was helpful to hear everybody's. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And so two things I will comment on is, one is that there's no small thing. Hope is huge. And sometimes, like, the things that we normally reach for, right? So if I reach for hope and optimism, if somebody reaches for connection, These are everyday things that fuel us as individuals, but also fuel our work of peer support, that are absolutely necessary. And it's no accident that these are the kinds of things that also support healing. Peer support, honestly, fundamentally is based on hope. We can do all kinds of other things and build on that, but if there's not hope as part of the foundation, what are we doing? Right? So it's no accident that the things that humans need for support, for connection, to feel a part of something, to feel worthwhile, all of those values are embedded in peer support because that's what humans need. So that is, true and at the heart. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there is trauma training out there where people will talk about big T trauma and little t trauma. I find that deeply disrespectful. And so I appreciated, Deborah, what you were saying about, there's the sources of trauma are different. The way that human beings respond to trauma can be unique as well. But trauma responses, it's a fundamental activation of your fear response. No matter what the cause, that's what's happening when your fear response is activated. And so when that comes up, for some people, some of the time the response is fight or flight or freeze, but also there are socially learned responses. So if I learned that the sound of my father's footsteps is something that I need to be afraid of, I'm going to be listening for those footsteps. And in that listening, my fear response is being activated and I'm trying to save myself. I'm trying to cope with what's coming because I'm trying to cope with what has already happened. So that's how trauma works. And there is no small t trauma. There is no big T trauma. It's just trauma. So
And
thank you.
Well, and I shared that one of our therapists would try to explain it with the little t, big T, but his point was more, they're all the same, that we can't judge some as little or
That's
big,
right.
but he did use those words to get to the next point. So it would be better just to not, but still his point was it's all trauma.
It's all trauma.
Right.
And it could be something that someone is judging as a tiny thing, or, what do you mean it's the color shirt I'm wearing? That's huge. That may stop us from connecting because the person who harmed me was wearing that color when they harmed me. Or that color reminds me of a room, or that color, that scent, the look on your face, right? So those are the things that we have to work hard to talk about, to understand. And so when someone is screaming, you need to calm down, that's not calming because the yelling is activating something. Right? It's already happening.
Loretta has her hand raised.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a barking dog in just a sec, so I may have to turn off my mic. I really like the idea of calling this a trauma action plan, and that if how I would use it would be giving my peer the space to talk about what they want to talk about, and then I would say, here's TAP. This is a great action plan, and the key to this is that for me, it would be a practice that over a period of time, getting to the cognitive will get quicker and quicker. The responses will be more in that part of the brain, in the problem solving, and not in the fear, flight, fight, freeze. And that's what I really like about this. It's something very tangible and it's very cognitive. And it's very much about observing what's going on in the brain, in the emotions, and with the body. And I think that there's some just great key elements to this, and that, the quicker the response to the problem solving would occur over a period of time of practice. And I really like it a lot. I think it's a great tool.
Cool. So, two things that come up for me. One is that I have a version of this that I created for domestic violence advocates to use, and it's in many different languages. So it's in Spanish, it's in English, it's in Korean. I think there's like 5 or 6 languages that it's available in. So when I send out information at the end, when we finish today, I'll make sure that I send you the link for that and the English version. And then you can, if you want to get it in different, because there's some information up front about emotional support. And then there's the last page is the page very similar to the page you're looking at. The second thing I want to share is that, again, because we don't all call it trauma, that it actually is called an emotional support plan on purpose, to be more accessible around language for the folks that you're sitting with. Because again, this isn't something you do to people, you do it with people. And so I would just offer that thought where some folks, I'm not saying that you have to do one or the other. I'm just naming that it's a guide for emotional support on purpose, or an emotional support plan. It's also self-directed on purpose, because so many times survivors have been told, this is what you're doing, this is what's happening for you. So what we want folks to do is to tell us for themselves what would be helpful, not helpful. Because I never once heard anyone who was injected or put in a 4-point restraint say thank you for the restraint. And so folks have had choices taken away. So I just wanted to open those two thoughts. Melissa, did you have your hand up?
Taz, I wanted to bring up that what she said about knowing when we need to take care of ourselves. Because that's what I discussed in my group, because I collect dragons, and when I'm home and I gotta get one down to sit with me, then it's a sign for me to know, okay, something is going on with you. Then I got some paces to go through with myself. Am I hiding something from myself? Do I need to call somebody? Do I need to go out to a meeting? But I'm definitely know that there's a sign that something is wrong when I got one of these dragons sitting on my lap. Because I used to have an emotional support dog, but I had to give it up. And it was amazing because the dog used to know instantly when something was going on with me. So I can't wait to be able to have my dog back, you know. But I just need to recognize the signs, because I'll walk around for days and something's wrong with me and won't even know.
Tess, thanks so much for that and all those truths. I mean, everybody's dropping gems today. Like really thinking about that self-awareness is critical. Like I know I need to know what I need, but I also need to know why I need it. And that's exactly what was happening as I was listening to you, really thinking about how are we showing up and why are we showing up this way so that we can do the work that we need to do. Sarah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just, as far as like going through when someone's experiencing that emotional response, or whatever people want to call it. I have found, even though, there's a lot of times there's a big difference between clinical language and peer support. I've really found that I've been able to use both no matter what setting I'm in. And maybe not clinical language is the best, but like I know that when certain peers talk to me, I'm studying psychology and I'm going eventually for my postdoctorate, and I've been able to find that using scientific analogies and scientific language to help them to help understand like what is going on in the physical body.
Mhm.
That seems to be very helpful sometimes, like when people like explaining like, hey, this is, sympathetic nervous system is kicked on, and also explaining that the emotions itself don't last very long. It's when we focus on them that they extend. And so I've been able to use some of my more psychological terms to my advantage.
Mhm. So thank you for sharing. And what I would offer is that, so in the PowerPoint, there's a diagram, a very simple diagram about a trauma response, what it is. So we get this information, it activates, and messages go to the brain activates the fear response. This is what happens when the alarm goes off. There's lots of ways to talk about the science of trauma. And the caution I have is that we can't assume that folks understand it, and folks also may not slow us down to say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? So having a picture, being able to make sure that you're checking in about understanding. Yeah, there's lots of science around how brains respond. And as long as you're explaining all the pieces and checking for understanding, why not? I think the more we talk about what trauma is and what trauma does and what's the impact of trauma, those are the important themes. And it's making sure that, because as we do this work, while there is some benefit for us in this sharing, it's not about us. It's where is the person we're supporting sitting, what's coming up for them, and then what from our own journeys would be helpful. So having science and language is all good stuff. It's how do we pull from that in the same way I would pull from my experience as a parent, in the same way I would pull from my experiences as a teacher, as a trauma survivor, as someone who has survived childhood and adult trauma, as someone who has survived cultural trauma in addition to the interpersonal violence. Like all of that stuff, all that experience is valuable, and I bring it in every room I'm in. But I need to make sure that as I'm unpacking it for sharing, that one, it's relevant to the person because it's not about me, is what's happening for them that they need to understand or are wrestling with or are looking for options. It's how do I unpack what I bring for them? So I can talk about cortisol all day long, but if naming cortisol as a stress hormone doesn't really resonate for that person, then I need to keep talking until we have some understanding. Because the last thing I want to do is other someone, right? So it's bring what you know, but also keep in mind that the sharing is for that other person.
Yeah, I only bring the scientific aspect
Yeah, no,
in
it's
if
all good. It's
if
all
that
good.
comes up.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
all
always
good.
bring it in. What I will say is that when someone's going through a lot of anxiety, I try to 99.9% of the time, I ask them, I'm like, hey, has this ceased in the past? And try to help or encourage them at least to focus on that anxiety, that fear, whatever it is, will cease. It may take a while, but it
Mhm.
will go away. And I also don't tell people everything's going to be fine.
That's
Because
right.
a lot of people don't like to hear that. I'm like, yeah, it's hard right now.
It
Uh,
is. And it's being able to name all those truths, right? All the truths are so important, so valuable. And again, unpacking for understanding. Let's see, Loretta, did you want to add anything more to the conversation?
I wanted to ask a question to the group and for you, Cathy, as well, because I've experienced this. Sometimes what I think gets kind of, and I'm going to use clinical terms here, something, a peer shows up and they've gone through some other support processes throughout the agency, and there is this perception that they're actually going through suicide ideation as opposed to re-experiencing a trauma activation. And that gets being in a what is maybe not a trauma sensitive atmosphere or environment where the automatic diagnosis is suicide ideation. How does that get approached in that clinical setting? Because some of us do work in a clinical setting as a peer, and that recognizing that sometimes, well, I'm not sure exactly, maybe that is occurring, but it's not the one that's up front at the time. It's what we're experiencing here is a trauma response. This is not, certainly suicide ideation is probably a part of this, but something's getting missed, and it's the trauma that's getting missed. So I just wanted to get people's input on that, especially you, Cathy.
Sure. So a couple things that come up for me. One is that it is not up to me to judge. It's not my role. So it's, I'm coaching a new peer support group that's developing, and we were meeting last night. And one of the things I said to them is that peer support is a come as you are space. And in peer support, when someone is struggling, my job is to sit with, be with, walk beside. And so I'm not judging, I'm not diagnosing, I'm not even interested in that. But the conversation might be, I'm here, I'll be with you, walk beside you for as long as I possibly can today. What would be helpful? So it would be the same as if someone, said that they had a hard morning. If someone said they wanted to die and were very explicit about it. If someone said, I just want the pain to stop, I'm here with you and listening. When you felt like this, or have you felt like this before, what was helpful? And then so that's the peer support piece, right? That's how, as a peer, I'm not judging what you said. I want to sit with you with what you've said. How can I be on this journey with you? Because that's what peer support is. How do I stay with you? Who else would it be helpful to share this with? I'm going to dig deep into curiosity, not this is my problem to fix, because it's not my problem to fix. I don't want to leave you alone because I don't want you lonely. I'm going to be with you. So that's how I'm going to talk about all plain language, real stuff. These are honest conversations. I've had them with people in training, after training, around trainings, or in my home, or in my peer support program, right? So it's how can I be with you? What's helped in the past? Is there someone else that you trust to talk about this with? Now, other side of this, I work in a program. Let's say my clinic says anybody reports that they are feeling suicidal, they want to die, they maybe have a plan. What's the policy in our program where I work? As the peer in this dynamic, I'm going to be honest with the person, and I'm going to say, this is big, this is important, and I will walk with you. And it's important that we let others know that this is where you're at right now. So if our policy is that as a peer specialist paid to do this work, I have to report this, I'm going to report this with the person at my side. Would it be helpful to talk to your therapist today? Is that someone you want to call? Can I sit with you while you call them? I'm not ever stepping outside of my peer role. There's what's the role and what do we do? We're connected to our values. And if policy says that this needs to be shared, then I'm going to share it. But I'm going to share it with the person right here at my elbow. And not as a, oh, I was talking with so-and-so today and they said they wanted to die, so I'm reporting that. That's not what that looks like at all. And so when people are engaged in a clinic, there's relationships with other people in the clinic, and there's the relationship with peer support. Who do you trust to talk with about this? And when you're feeling this way, who's been helpful in the past? Can I go with you and we can find that person and we can make that call and see if you can get an appointment. I'm going to have them do as much as they can do, but I'm also going to keep checking in about what would be helpful from me right now. Does that make sense? Am I being clear about what I'm saying here? Because we have to be careful that peer support does not get co-opted. And part of what that looks like is we start reporting on people's behavior. That's not why we're here. If people need to share something, there's a behavior that's concerning, we need to talk about it. We need to talk with them about it. And we need to work with them to get to where they need to be. That's our role. Andrew, did you want to add something? We've got a few minutes.
You're muted, Andrew.
There.
Oh, you're muted again. Oh,
Okay, cool.
there
So
you
what
go.
I was going to say is I work in a similar environment, I think, and there are a lot of clinicians, and like I do have the benefit of seeing my people every day, like hanging out with
Love
them.
it.
One thing that I do strongly is advocate for other services, because I think, like we all know, the conversations I have with my people are a lot closer and a lot more intimate than like what they're feel comfortable with, like say with a nurse practitioner or a therapist. So one thing I do is try to maintain healthy, productive relationships with the clinicians, because there is the whole separation of like the language the providers have and the language me and my people have. And so being able to kind of translate things helps smooth the process out. But also, just like Miss Cathy was saying, in advocating for the other services whenever stuff comes up, because some stuff is not my, I can provide the service that I can provide. And a lot of times, I know a lot of my things require more than just one service. Like I get therapy and I take meds and I go to groups and all kind of stuff. So what I do is advocate for those other services with my peers. And I love, most of the time, it happens that it's their idea. That, maybe this would be something good for me to bring up with my therapist. Or as always, as a peer, I can go with you and advocate for you. Like I can go with you and support you in this, and I can hold your hand and we can share this together, and we can interpret the response together, because it's not always, what a provider might offer someone as a solution. I might not, I was told for years to do positive affirmations in the mirror, looking at myself every day. And I never did it ever. But when I first started, I found out myself I could write affirmations. I wrote a bunch for a long time, and now I can say them in the mirror. So sharing experiences like that with a peer who has gotten instruction or guidance from like an MP or a clinician helps the process move along. And those are the kinds of little things that we know that they don't know. And like a lot of people say, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's helped me a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing. Again, everybody dropping gems today. Like really thinking about like, how do we stay in our peerness and be this connector for other things? And this idea of, yeah, I can advocate, I can offer, ideas for referral, I can clarify options, right? We don't have to step outside of our peer lane to do any of those things and talk about what's been helpful to us. So sometimes it truly is around what are we clarifying and how do we let folks know the things that are truly available to them? no one has to do a hard thing alone. And so if that's what we're saying, what a gift that is, right? So all the things. So we are out of time. I want to thank you all for being so engaged and interactive today. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I learned some new things, so thank you all for that. You have the PowerPoint from when we were in the CARES Connect together. If you need to reach out or have additional questions, my email, I believe, is in the PowerPoint. I'm also going to send the resource that I talked about today. The one other thing I'll say really quickly is that the National Center, where I work as a consultant, they also have a toolkit on how to make your whole organization more trauma informed. Because the center is focused on domestic violence, the toolkit was created in a partnership with domestic violence, mental health, and peer support programs. And so you'll notice there's some language that will resonate around peer support. So I will make those things available to you all. Take care. Have a good rest of your day. And thank you so much.
So before everybody starts to leave, let's all give Cathy a big thank you for joining us and coming to hold this space with us.
Thank you,
And
You're welcome.
yeah.
Thank
And I'm
you
going
so
to
much.
drop
Thank
the
you.
link as well for the feedback form. So please, there's the link. If y'all could please click on that and fill it out, let us know. We're always looking for ways to improve. Also, just a reminder, certificates will be sent out sometime next week by Al. We will be sending out any resources that were mentioned in today's discussion, as well as I probably will also send out the emotional support plan as well attached with the certificates.
Oh my God, I need to schedule, but yeah, I need to schedule a day to come to the house.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. And so remember, Al Cotton wanted me to remind each of you to save your CEU certificates so that you will have them ready to submit in December of 2024. Is there any other questions that you guys have before we all say farewell today? No?
Bye.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Oh, wow.